Good afternoon and welcome to Penn Sports Podcast. This is Frank Edgar.
I'm Boo Williams.
Bringing you another great show today. We've got so many sports around the peninsula here in southeastern Virginia to talk about. Basketball is at its peak of its season. We're finishing conference tournaments going towards the state.
This is the best time of the year, Frank. You have seasons starting, seasons ending. You know, great track meet over at Boo's place. Basketball championship playoffs. I mean, it's a great time of year.
And state champions abound in all these different sports. We were so proud of the Poquoson team. We're going to have to get their coach Eric Decker back on with us.
Oh, yeah.
What a champion team that was. I got to watch some of the matches this week on YouTube and some other places to find them.
Did you?
I watched the McCormick brothers in their two matches. One of them has 4 state titles. The other one just won his first as a freshman. So a lot of great. The future is bright there at Poquoson wrestling.
Oh man, the history there is amazing. I mean, with the McCormick, the oldest McCormick's going to UVA. He has 4 titles. The youngest one has 1. He'll probably get 4 as well. I mean, you know, they haven't won since '99, which surprised me. But the legacy there is so rich.
Well, and of course the basketball legacy is historic around here on the peninsula. We've got all these teams playing in the tournament. Been some disappointments and been some great successes. But we'll get to those. Wubay's got us a special guest. Wubay in a little sport that not a lot of people get out and see.
Yeah, we have Jim McGrath. He's a Daily Press correspondent, and he covered the 5 and 6 state meet over at Boo's. And great insight, great article this whole weekend. Focusing on a couple athletes, and he had one athlete in particular he's going to talk about later that had 3 gold medals, and we'll see what he has to say about that.
Well, before we get to Jim, I want to thank our sponsor, Goldstein, Edgar, and Regan. Chip Goldstein so kindly loaning us the conference room and getting us up on the big sign here at the office. And then, of course, our producer, Randy Pagoli, doing such a great job putting it together. Looks like we got Jim. Wubay, why don't you introduce our guest?
All right, we're now joined by Daily Press correspondent Jim McGrath. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, gentlemen.
Good to have you, Jim. We've been looking forward to getting with you as the Daily Press is going to go to you more and more now for correspondent duties, and you're getting to see a wide variety of sports, and Wubay tells me you went out to a track meet recently.
Yes, I did. I spent the better part of Friday and yesterday at the 5A, 6A state meet. And one thing with track meets, and I guess swimming people and wrestling people can attest to this also. It's not a 2 or 3 hour game. I mean, you get there. I know I got there before 7 in the morning both days and walked out past 7 at night. So it's really an all day venture, and you know it's long. I think when we were first communicating about this, I just mentioned what time are we doing this? 'Cause I'm going to be tired on Sunday.
Well, tell me now, was it worth the travel? Your article certainly looks like it was.
It was. I mean, it was kind of tough sledding for the Peninsula teams, but overall, not too bad. The Bethel boys ended up in 6th place. The Bethel girls had the highest team position. They came in 4th. In fact, they were leading after the first day. Ironically enough, on the strength of their field events, the girls came in 1st and 2nd in the shot put. That would be Johnny Davis and India Hansley. And it was just ironic because Beth's really known as a sprinting middle distance. I mean, they're really, the strength of their runners. Your Francina McCory, Javelle Bullock, people like that. I mean, they just have a whole history that focuses on their sprinters, but they were scoring all these points in the field. In fact, even Jalen Raines, a senior high jumper, ended up getting 2nd. So they scored 26 points on day 1, and they were leading everybody by 9 points.
Well, Jim, you spoke of history at Bethel track. One kid that probably will make history when his career is over is E.J. Richardson. Talk about the great day he had over at Boo Williams.
Phenomenal. And it was somewhat unexpected. Last year, Bethel boys, they won the 5A state title again. They repeated. But the first year they won it, they had 11 individuals. Last year they had 5. So they really put everybody to the mat. And in EJ's case, they said, you're going to run the 500, the 300, and the 1,600-meter relay. Now, for those in the know with track, those events come in the second half of the meet, and any one of them on its own is a hard event. I mean, I think the commonality is the 400 or 800 are probably 2 of the hardest events in track. So to do one of them is grueling enough. To do three of them over the space of 3 or 4 hours is just really asking a lot from somebody. But he put himself out there last year, won the 500, won the 300, and probably one of the most amazing things I've seen in track. He was anchoring the 1,600-meter relay, gets the baton in 5th place. And, he's the last runner, and he's 50 meters behind the front. And you just figure, well, too bad. Bethel gave it a good run. But he just started inching up and made up about half the distance, and then just put on a second lap, a final 200, blows by everybody else, and just wins the race. Close race, a couple of tenths of a second. So they win the race itself. They win the state title from those 10 points. And you figure, wow, that's probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Well, cue this year. Bethel wasn't necessarily in the running for the team title, but he had qualified for the 500 and 300, and he was a defending state champion, so he was going to run both of those races anyway. The thing was, some of his competition from last year, there was a brother, Josiah Hill, that gave him a pretty good run last year. He was a fellow sophomore, and it just turns out his brother Jeremiah transferred into Burt. I don't know where he was going to school before, but all of a sudden these twin brothers are both running against him in both races, and both of them are seated ahead of him. So EJ comes into each of these races seated third, beats both the brothers and, of course, everybody else to win those two again. And then we're coming up on the 1,600-meter relay to conclude the meet, and the coaches decided, Nanette Gaines and Joe Sturgis, they decided to put them right back in there at the anchor leg, just because they figured that the team had a chance to win. And it's like, this can't, lightning can't strike twice. But sure enough, DJ gets the baton. He's doing a little. The other runners did a little better for him this time. They gave it to him in 4th place, only 30 meters behind the leader. And it was deja vu all over again. He made up some of the ground on the first lap, picked off one runner on the back stretch, picked off the second runner, and then coming around into the home stretch, he came, and it was one of the Hill Bros. In fact, he passed him on the turn and out kicked him to the line. So just amazingly, the same thing happened 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that probably will never be repeated, Jim. That's an outstanding performance by the young man. Now, that was pretty much the highlight of the boys. I understand the girls you had a few more schools from the peninsula that in the scoring.
Yes, Hampton was in 6th place as a team. That was mostly on the strength of 2 ninth-grade girls. Thinking about the future of Peninsula District track, I'm optimistic about it. I've heard some rumbles like, well, it's not like it used to be. And you talk to some of these older guys and gals, they go on about, I remember how, we used to just win everything. And Bethel had a fantastic run. Eddie Williams was there. He's still in the mix, but he won 13 state championships between the boys and the girls. And obviously the Bethel boys won 2 years in a row. But some of the other teams have dropped off a bit. But Hampton, getting back to your question, they're 2 ninth-grade girls.
Well, Jordan Hardy looks like she had a good in the jumping.
Yeah, she placed in the top 5 in jumping. I think she had some 9th-grade nerves there because she was seated first in both of them. Certainly not going to find fault with her and say, well, she should have won. She's a 9th grader. She's going to be there again and again and again. So, I look forward to great things from her. And Aaliyah Armstrong was 4th in the 55 meters. And I think she's going to improve quite a bit. She was also in the 300, didn't fare as well there, but I imagine if she builds up and gets her strength and power and her running in order, she should be a force in the 55 and the 300. And then both Jordan and Aaliyah ran on Hampton's 4x200, which also placed. They were 6th. But again, with 2 freshmen on the squad, they're going to be back. So I look forward to seeing some great things from Hampton also.
Now, from an individual, mention Ariane Riddick, because that name, of course, has long roots here on the peninsula in track. She had a pretty good showing.
She did. She was 3rd in the 1,000 and dropped 5 or 6 seconds from her best time. You hear I hear a lot about the distance runners are all in Northern Virginia, and they have some runners who can break 3 minutes in 1,000 meters, but Ariane ran a 3:03. I mean, I was coming off of a 3:09 or 3:10 best. Great improvement. She's going to be, that was really a statement. Coming in third in that race, very impressive.
Jim, you've been watching the track for a while, and you mentioned the teams being up and down. Wu Bei and I have both talked about the strength of the track teams around here. Do you see any diminishment in number of student athletes participating, or is this or is it a talent issue?
I think some of it's in the numbers. I think some of it. It's really hard to say. I mean, I've thought about this quite a bit. It's really hard to say. I don't think it's so much in the numbers because I was coaching when I first moved down here in 2003. I coached at Denby for 5 years and at Menchville for a couple of years, and there was a year in Grafton in there somewhere. I don't remember anywhere between 2003 and my last year at Menchville, 2013, there being a great drop off among any of the teams. Part of it's a talent, part of it's a number, to some degree it's a number, but I just think kids have so many more things to be involved with now.
That's probably true in all sports. So you move from track, or what else are you going to cover this coming couple of weeks?
Well, along with I have a community sports notebook I have in the Daily Press every Wednesday, and right now I cover a lot of swimming, a bit of wrestling, some karate, really whatever is going on out there, and really if there's a community team, youth football, basketball, anything like that, and you're trying to get some coverage for your team, please contact me. I'm always looking for stories. And that would be at my email address, which is JF McGrath, MCGRATH, the number 65 at gmail.com. I'm always looking for something to put up.
Yeah, Jim,
that's what I'm prepared for. We're trying to. We'll
definitely reach out to you during springtime, or a lot of sports that need coverage that haven't necessarily got the coverage that they deserve. Not just, not anybody's fault, just from a number standpoint. There's so many teams out here. So we'll definitely reach out to you, Jim, as the spring season comes around.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And you did a great job on the track meet, the coverage on the track meet. Wish we'd have had some more state champions, but we have the outdoor season to look forward to as well.
We sure do, and like I said, those two young ladies from Bethel, I mean, first and second in the shot put, well, they get to add the discus to it in the spring, so just speaking of numbers, well, there's one more event the Peninsula could score a gold or silver medal in.
Well, we watched India and Jelani both play basketball, and always enjoy watching them play inside on the hardwood. So I hope all the fans here on the Peninsula will get outside and join Jim on the sidelines and watch those two young ladies and all the other athletes in the outdoor track.
I certainly hope so. And the most amazing thing with those two, they had just come off the basketball season, had 2 weeks to practice, and then go out and get first and second in the state meet. Just phenomenal.
All right, Jim. We appreciate your help and your info and your input, and we'll catch you down the road, Jim. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. That was Jim McGrath for the Daily Press. Wu Bei, I tell you, great to have him on, and it's hard to catch up with him. You heard him; he's at a 2-day track meet that took 2 days.
Yeah, then he works in Chesapeake, lives in Denby, so his commute is pretty long, and he did a great job covering the 5 and 6 state track meet. He talked about E.J. Richardson, Frank. I mean, this kid is amazing. He wins 3 gold medals for Bethel last year. He single-handedly won them a state championship. Not necessarily title. They didn't win the title this year, but they came in 6th. But I mean, E.J. Richardson, he's only a junior. He'll be back next year. Winning the 500, the 300, and then the relay.
Yeah,
for Bethel.
King Edward III. They have named him, and deservedly so. So outstanding.
And I mean, we talked about the numbers too, Frank. I mean, we've been talking about that, something that we're going to dip into later on in our podcast coming up on the enrollment issues that we're having on the Peninsula, and how some of the South Side teams are, or I guess, taking over, so to speak, for lack of a better term, some of these championships in football, basketball. You even see it in track and baseball. It's unfortunate that the enrollment is dropping, and you can tell Bethel did win the last two, but nobody else on the peninsula's really placed except for Hampton and Bethel. I think you said Minchville had one girl on there.
Well, I just hope that these young folks realize they can get out there on these track teams and pick what they want to do. I had a good friend, Alan Johnson, who decided in 10th or 11th grade to be a pole vaulter. We would have known a pole vaulting to save our lives back then, but Alan picked it up and did very well. And there's all these different sports within track. Great group of coaches that we have around the area, and can really push these kids to levels where they can go to college on these things.
And Coach Williams, he was at Bethel. Look 13 state championships. But you have so many coaches that are retiring now, so now they're trying to pass the baton, no pun intended,
the pun,
over to these other coaches that have to keep that legacy, still, where it was before they got the job. And you look at some of these teams, Frank, Western Branch, they've been contenders for so long. Nansemond River won another championship on the girls' side. So, it's the same teams are winning, but these peninsula teams, we just hope that they can get some more involvement, and some kids that are interested, like you said, in running track. You get to pick your event. A lot of these track stars, like the two girls from Bethel, are basketball players, by day, and track stars by night.
Right.
So there is a place for you on the track. A lot of football players used to run. I know Ron Bates used to tell me stories about how they used to leave the Mike Smith's football practice and go run track,
right?
To help their skills in the off season. So. It's definitely an exciting sport. It's a long wait between each event, but it's a very exciting sport to attend.
Well, good to hear from Jim, and we'll catch up with him later this spring to find out where the Daily Press has sent him next. I tell you, the Daily Press has done a great job covering basketball tournaments, which are scattered around our area, unbelievably scattered around our area with this new system. And so you're playing. You don't have a Peninsula District tournament followed by a regional tournament at Scope. Right. You're playing the conference championships, which feed into the state system, and part of the conference championships end up at Scope. We've got a good ball game this coming week. Hampton High is going to play Salem for the 5A title.
Yep, and Princess Anne's playing Norview on the girls' side, and the Phoebus boys they lost a heartbreaker against Hopewell, and their 3A region championship. But all of them go to state. Hampton goes to state, but they're not thinking about that. They want a region championship against Salem from Virginia Beach.
We've got the Tab girls that went and got upset. What I consider an upset, but they've got a chance to come back and play that same team that beat them.
It's a Hopewell, I believe.
Yeah, I think they're going to have quite a tournament. Yeah, I'm looking here. Tab is in the class. It's Class 3. They're up at Orange High School next weekend against Culpeper County, and then if they win that, they face the winner of Hopewell and William Monroe. And Hopewell's the top seed on that part of the bracket, the state bracket. So we wish Jason Clark well on that. He's had a terrific year. Only two losses all year.
Yeah.
One in a Christmas tournament and one in the conference final. So good performance by him. The Bocosin girls are going to make an appearance up at Williamsburg at War Hill High School this coming weekend. They're going to be in the Class 2 Girls State Championship. Nice run by the Bull Islander girls on that. And then Surrey County, which has been playing well all year long. Surrey actually is going to go to Sussex Central. They're going to be the top seed in their quarterfinal in Class 1 this coming weekend. So girls basketball playing pretty well. The Hampton Crabbers upset early.
Yeah, we were.
Phoebus upset early, and sadly, no Peninsula District girls teams in playoffs.
I was following that Hampton girls game against Norview. The game went into overtime, and they suffered a tough loss against the Norview Pilots. But a great year for Coach Sean DeBailey and the Hampton Crabbers. They made it really far, and they have a lot of good young talent coming back, so they should be in good shape.
Well, you mentioned Princess Anne. My goodness, has Princess Anne given up as many points in 3 games as they scored in the first game? And I don't think they have. They scored over 100 points in the first game against Moray. I think they outscored them 35-0 in the first quarter. Went on to win of 100-something to...
Yeah, they played Minchville in... what was it like? I think Minchville had 6 points at the half.
Oh, they're outstanding. They're looking for... I believe this coach is going for his 9th state championship at Princess Anne.
Oh man, it's a factor. It's a machine over there. It's what he's built. They're going for their 5th straight state championship. They have 4 state championships.
And there's been no competition here locally. So the girls loaded to go, and then we talk about the boys. Hampton High playing this week at over where they're at Scope.
Scope, yep.
And they're going to play Salem, and that's going to give one of those teams the Class 4 title, the other the runner-up. We also have teams already in, as you mentioned, the Phoebus Phantoms already in, and then Deep Creek, Lake Taylor playing in the boys Class 4. That's going to be tough.
Lake Taylor looks like they're on a run right now. They're playing probably as well as anybody in this area. They've had a couple heartbreak losses the last couple years, but this might be the year for Lake Taylor.
And so that's just the basketball around the area. We had head coach Tony Rutland on a couple weeks ago. His number 2 seeded Hampton Christian upset Williamsburg Christian Saturday night this past weekend, 58-53. They earned the Metro Conference Tournament Championship. Nice performance, and we talked to him about his players really buying in and kind of learning how to win. And
great, man!
It looks like they've learned it.
So happy for him to get that title over there. It's tough. I mean, he talked about some of his kids. It's hard to get kids to come in, and you're coming from a public school where it's free, and then you get kids who have to pay for their education over there, and he's doing a great job. I'm so happy for him in this program.
And then we mentioned a couple of individuals. A.J. Baker with 15 points, Jair Johnson with 13 for Hampton Christian, Jacob Tabay and his brother Evan had one. Jacob had 11, Evan had 8 assists and 7 points for the Warriors. So the Warriors in good hands with Tony Rutland, and first title at Hampton Christian since 1999. So great, nice selection of Tony Rutland to come coach your basketball team.
Awesome. He brings a lot of knowledge and experience over to that program, and like I said, I'm just so happy for him and his program. He's turning around, and they're going trying to get a state title.
Well, let me go back and we say a little something about our friends over in Surrey County. Young ladies went all the way up to Lexington to play the Region 1A tournament, and they won a game up there over Lancaster, 45-29. They're looking good. It'd be interesting to see the little school over in Surrey, see if they can bring home a state title over there.
See, I always looked at Surrey as a football program, but I see, they took a trip up north, right? And then they got it and took care of business. Well,
that's outstanding, and I hope that our Surrey fans can fill us in on how that goes up wherever they're playing. Of course, all these teams will end up at VCU probably early the following week. So we'll bring you those title results. We'll have some next week, and then we'll have the state title games the following week.
Yeah, hopefully we can get some championship coaches on after the state titles the following week. But we're going to be following the basketball tournaments all the way until championship Saturday.
Well, we're going to find Eric Brown and get him to talk to us on a Sunday afternoon and see what Eric has to say about his Crabbers. I know he's got his focus right now on the game with Salem, because remember, isn't it Salem that took out the football team?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a little payback.
I didn't even think about that.
Remember, is the foot in or the foot out?
And Coach Smith didn't leave the stadium until like midnight, just protesting.
Jaquarius Bellamy doesn't want to suit up on a basketball uniform, trying to
get Cam Stephen at point guard. Suit him up. Yeah, I didn't think about that. You're right. They don't want to call it revenge, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was bullet board material.
I bet it is. All right, and then. We've got a lot going on around the area. We want to follow up with the coaches that we talked with, so feel free to let us know what's going on during the week. And also, we want to mention we came into a record today, and I met Pearl Kruger with the Williamsburg Aquatic Club. She is swimming today over at the Midtown in that 50-meter pool where Wu Bei and I would drown about 10 meters in. She's in the 100 free and the 200 IM tonight. She's a Williamsburg resident, 14 years old, and she's here resting outside the studio, getting ready for that. So we wish Pearl Kruger well in her upcoming swimming, and all the swimmers over there. That's year-round swimming that God bless the parents.
God bless them. They're there all day. Well, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., like Jim McGrath does over at the track meets. So.
That's right. And then, and all of my wife and my daughter's friends who do the horse shows, that's the same type of schedule.
Well, I'm getting ready to start I'm going to have a track star in my family, so I'm going to know all that, all that familiar with late days and late nights.
She's running over at Boo Williams.
Yep.
And then your daughter, I understand, has had an accomplishment on the soccer field.
Just made the varsity team again as a sophomore, so we'll try to get Coach Midlick, the head coach over there at Bethel, later on in the season to talk about their team. They're gonna have a pretty good team this year, so we'll get a lot of these spring coaches on. There's so many sports to go around, but we're gonna do our best to get as many spring coaches and spring sports on this podcast as we can.
Well, let me also, while we're talking about some other sports, I know Art Link, the new coach over at CNU, he's just finished his first year. He's 5-5. He and I got to sit at a basketball game this weekend and talk a little bit about our area. And Coach Link really would like to recruit more heavily here on the peninsula. He's got his people out trying to get some of our players. The trick with CNU is going to be trying to get the grades to get into Christopher Newport. It's become a very tough school to get in, but he's a marvelous coach. They were 5-5 last year in a transition year. He's building for the future, and he's got some names, and I can't give them out yet, but he's got some players from many of the schools on the peninsula, and he certainly would love to have more. I know we mentioned last week, I think Elizabeth City State had done a great job recruiting. I think they got a couple he was interested in, but I know Coach Link would like to have more players, and he is. We're going to have him on this spring, so
awesome.
All of our listeners can talk to their young boys and figure out how they get those kids ready to compete over at Christopher Newport.
Yeah, I mean, I love when the guys stay local, and CNU is a great rising program. They went 5-5, I think you said last year, but. Historically, CNU's always had a good football program.
And it's a beautiful facility.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Now, I will tell you, and I'll have more detail on this, but Coach Link has arranged to have Virginia Tech come in here, bring their team in for a spring practice session, and allow the players from Virginia Tech and some of the players at CNU to be around, available to our young athletes to come up there and talk about how you get into these programs.
And that's a win-win for both programs, because Virginia Tech always recruits this area anyway, so they bring their players down here, and the kids who want to go to Virginia Tech can see them in the area, and the kids who want to go to CNU can see the interaction with the Virginia Tech players, so it's a win-win for both programs.
I also want to give a shout-out to the Daily Press, Dave Johnson, of course, covering CNU, but Rob Ostermeyer, who, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know Rob, all you have to do is look at the sports page in particular, but his picture of a young man I know, Tyler Femi, the guard for CNU, his picture in the Sunday Daily Press is outstanding, and that is classic Rob Ostermeyer. What a terrific photographer he is. He's joined over there on staff by Eileen Devlin, and they just do a great job of capturing good sports photographs. Rob's been around a long time, but and if you see a picture in the Daily Press of your student athlete, call Rob, call the Daily Press, and you can get a copy from them.
Rob does a great job. I've been a fan of his for a long time on his pictures, and like you said, he's everywhere. He's all over the peninsula. He does a great job.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. I want to thank our sponsor, of course, Goldstein, Edgar, and Regan. Thank our producer, Randy Begoli. Remember to follow the Penn Sports Podcast at Penn Sports Pod on Twitter, and Penn Sports Podcast, 2 words, on YouTube is the easiest way to pick up our podcast. So Penn Sports Podcast on YouTube. Our email is pensportspodcast@gmail.com. Send us a note if you like the show. Certainly like us on whatever social media you're looking. You like us, give us a thumbs up, anything. And we hope to get with you again next week.
Yeah, don't forget, in the next couple of podcasts, we're going to be focused on these state titles in basketball, and then we're going to start diving into spring sports.
That's going to be exciting. Baseball season right around the corner. I went yesterday to War Memorial. They had the apprentice school out playing in a tournament.
It's getting close, huh?
And it was nice and beautiful weather yesterday, so it just reminiscent of what we're going to have coming up here in the spring.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us today on the Penn Sports Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.